Good morning, everyone. We are going to begin our time together by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the seized territory of the Ohlone people. We pay respects to their elders past and present. We acknowledge that every community, ours included, owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy to making history that led to this moment today. Some people were brought here against their will. Some were drawn to leave their distant homes in hope of a better life, and some have lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. So we take this time to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us all here together today. All while we imagine and hope for a future where all of us can truly belong and thrive in this city and beyond.
We, members of the PACT Clergy Caucus, have invited everyone here today to stand in solidarity with the Asian American Pacific Islander community. In a few minutes, we will have an interfaith prayer vigil here in Japantown. Then we will walk down to City Hall for a rally. There you will hear from speakers from many backgrounds, organizations, and religious traditions, many ethnicities and countries of origin, and many ages and genders and sexualities. Our sincerest hope is that we can create a space here today where each and every one of us is seen, valued, and feels a deep sense of belonging. Many of you have signed the statement we have written and circulated. We will read it aloud now.
The past year has been an extraordinary time of revelation. The ever-present injustices of our society are being witnessed as they have never been before, exacerbated as they are by the COVID-19 pandemic and its resultant financial burdens. We, the members of the PACT Clergy Caucus, deliberately employ the language of revelation because while we acknowledge that the time feels exceptional, the truth is that these injustices caused by racism, xenophobia, the hoarding of wealth and power, and the many other evils of white supremacy have been part and parcel of the United States since its founding on stolen land, stolen people, and stolen labor.
In the past year, the United States has seen an unprecedented rise in violence and hate crimes against the Asian American Pacific Islander, AAPI community. In March of this year, a mass shooter in Atlanta targeted and killed 6 women of Asian descent. While at first this brought a conversation to the national level about the rising violence against AAPI people, the majority of Americans and the media now seem to have moved on.
The Stop AAPI Hate Reporting Center released data in March of 2021 that revealed that during the pandemic year of March 2020 to February 2021, they received nearly 3,800 reports of hate incidents. The majority of these incidents consisted of verbal harassment against women, and there was also an alarming increase in the number of public physical attacks on older people. The perpetrators of this violence are attacking the most vulnerable in our midst. And as people of faith, we will not be silent.
In the past year, we faith leaders have made statements in support of Black Lives Matter, marched in solidarity with people calling for police accountability, and urged elected officials to work with the community in reimagining public safety. The fight against white supremacy is not a zero-sum game, but an intertwined, cross-sectional fight against all forms of prejudice and hate-motivated violence against all marginalized people.
So now we, a multiracial, multicultural, multi-religious group of clergy and faith leaders, name the rising violence against the AAPI community with the same fervor that we have spoken out about police brutality against black and brown people.
Now we call on the city and county elected officials and on all community leaders to acknowledge the past and present history of anti-AAPI racism in our midst.
We urge these leaders to recognize and honor the myriad ways that AAPI peoples have contributed and are contributing to the building of our society, structurally, culturally, and spiritually.
We demand that these leaders implement policies and practices that ensure the dignity, respect, and safety of AAPI communities, and that these leaders take clear and decisive action in response to anti-AAPI violence or harassment.
My friends, thank you for being here today to stand in solidarity with the AAPI community. It is true that none of us are free until we are all free. I will now invite the Reverend Gerald Sakamoto forward to usher us into this holy time together.
There is a verse in the Dhammapadas that in part reads, "Hatred is not overcome by hate." Our families, in our homes, we gather together. We resolve the difficulties that come up in our families. Our differences sometimes are resolved amicably, but sometimes these differences may split us and cause our families to fall apart. Our families are also in our communities where people gather together, people discuss issues, people care about one another. But sometimes in our communities as well, our differences pull us apart. In our communities are linked together with other places. And across the world, we are connected together in one humanity. Until we are able to resolve the difficulties that separate us, we will not be able to be at peace. Those differences result from our inability to see each other as ourselves, that separate us, that cause us to see the other as less than us. As we participate in this event today, mindful that hatred does not overcome hatred, that the other part of this Dhammapada reads, hatred is overcome by love.
I'll be giving the Islamic call for prayer, call for peace. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
I'd like now to call on PJ Hirabayashi from Taiko Peace, and she is going to help us to reflect about the violence that has happened around us. So just a moment, and then I will say a few words. We have chosen this place to begin our march and our vigil because we are surrounded by reminders of both the racism and the tenacity and the endurance of Asian people in our midst. 1 block east of here is the site of Chinatown for San Jose that replaced the one that originally was burned down. And it's also called Heinleinville because of the man who granted the property there for his Chinese neighbors to live. A Filipino community also grew up across the street, and then Japantown was formed here. And we have a historically Japanese American Methodist church, the Buddhist church, and these reminders. This Nikkei lantern has a bend in it that happens at February 19th, 1942, when the proclamation that led to the interning of 120,000 Japanese in the internment camps of that time. But we're also right in the site of more current incidents of violence against our Asian and Pacific Islander neighbors. People have been assaulted with just a few blocks from here, or even 1 block from here. And there are patrols now of citizens meant to keep, especially our elders, more safe as they walk these streets. So let's just take a moment and pause and ponder what it is that we are standing against here and how we can stand with one another against all of this. Now call on Pastor Helen Kung from St. Paul's United Methodist Church to speak to us.
Siblings, I have never, ever been so outside of my comfort zone. My spiritual symbol has always been a bridge to be sort of invisible, standing in the gap area, and being asked to come and speak on behalf of Asian American people. I didn't sleep last night. I woke up at 5 this morning and I really had the jitter all along the way. But because how do you represent 45 different nations, hundreds of different languages, people who have not spoken, people aren't even aware of the history. But I was reflecting, if someone like me who took that kind of history, who's experienced it, aren't willing to speak up, how do people of Asian American Pacific Islander heritage who don't know that we are being lumped together as a unit, we are being targeted as a unit, how do we speak up for them if they don't even know? Because they speak a different language, because they're new immigrants, because perhaps they are buried in the work and labor and fight for their life in the middle of the pandemic, in the middle of trying to survive for an entire family that we don't know about. That's my emotion coming here. I wanted to be here to speak up for the voiceless, for the people whose country we don't even know, who's a minority in their own minority country. As a person, I started out life thinking I'm Chinese American, born in the United States, not realizing shortly after that I'm actually overseas Chinese Taiwanese. And then after that, when people tell me that I am Asian American, I was fighting with that identity. Those paths goes along with almost every Asian American person. Who are we? But in this country, we're lumped together. We are being attacked because no matter what, they see us, attackers see us as one lump sum. I just want to end, before we go on the march, with a short prayer. Heavenly Lord, you created us all equal. You bring every living situations into our being and allow all the uniqueness of every being to contribute to a whole body of human race. Allow us to recognize that. Allow us to be both, and allow us to be both a nation, a nationality, a sexual orientation, a gender, a collective American and international and global. Allow us to contribute to your world as a human race, as a loving kind, and as who we truly are, created by a loving creator. We pray this in the name of love. Amen.
Thank you. It's very heartwarming to see all of you here gathering for the cause for humanity. And as a Hindu American, born and raised in India and then moving to United States and making our lives, building our lives from the scratch, raising a family and meeting our spiritual goals, it has been quite a journey. And recently from the Hindu American community, we have had quite a few incidences. A couple was targeted in Sunnyvale, run over by a car. Somebody was screaming terrorists. Even during the lockdown, one of the trustees of Fremont Hindu Temple, his house was surrounded and intimidated. So apart from verbal abuse, misinterpretation of our faith and culture and traditions, violence, there is also the trait of intimidation. If we are able to practice our way of life with dignity and equality and pluralism in this country, which was founded on some of those ethical value system as we understand as immigrants. So it is our collective fight, and it is in the spirit of solidarity that I stand here with all of you. And I am hopeful that as God's children, this is a journey to feel our calling of being whole with the universe, whole with God's vision for us, whole among ourselves, finding that balance, coexisting. Thank you and namaste.
Friends, we're going to get ready for our march. So we want to start the way we want to end, which is in peace. So I'm going to lead us through an exercise where we'll get our bodies ready for this march. So I want you to take a breath in your mask and take this breath deep into your body. And notice the places of tightness. Those places have been working hard to take care of you. So breathe a breath of thanksgiving to those sore places and tell them, relax. We are held by a greater good, a greater spirit of love. And now I will lead us through a light grounding exercise. So what you will do is imagine your spine filled with light. Warm, luscious honey, strong light. Feel this light. And now imagine this light reaching into the earth, digging deep into the earth. And imagine your whole body filled with light. And this light is so strong, it digs all the way to the center of the earth. Keep drilling. Now you are strong. Now you are at peace. Now you are courageous. And now branch this light out like roots of a tree. Find each other's light. Share your light with one another. Let your roots connect like hands, like embraces. And now we are strong. We are courageous. We are at peace. And out of this abundance of light and peace and courage, we now move this light throughout Japantown. Move the light down the street. Find every person, every tree, every living creature, every building, and give this light to all that this light passes by. Move this light to Chinatown, to all of downtown, all of San Jose. And now let your imagination grow big and wide and daring. Move it up and down California. Move it to the coast. Move it to the next state. Move it into the ocean. And now we grow even more daring because this light is strong and we are courageous and we are at peace. We move this light across the United States to every hill and valley and creature, every person. Flood this nation with the light. It is strong. It is courageous. It is at peace. And now we know this light is not just for ourselves. So we move it to Canada, to Mexico, across the oceans, across the continents, until this whole earth is grounded in this light. Let us pause here for 30 seconds.
Beloveds, let us turn this light into song. We invite us to sing a song, a beautiful song from the African American tradition that has been used in protests and in marches for centuries probably, and certainly for decades. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. And then we'll call out new verses. And as we sing after the first verse, we will begin to march. Who will lead the way? Sammie is going to be the person who's going to be leading the way. All right, dear ones, here we go. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Building up a world, building up a world. hate. I'm gonna let it shine, stopping all the hate. I'm gonna let it shine, stopping all the hate. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. All throughout this county, I'm gonna let it shine. All throughout this county, I'm gonna let it shine. All throughout this county, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Building up a world, building up a world. I'm gonna let it shine, building up a world. I'm gonna let it shine, building up a world. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light